Happy Wednesday evening, Bayou Blitz family. I hope everybody is having a great week. Welcome to the post-mortem edition of the 2022 New Orleans Saints regular season. As we carry on with the Bayou Blitz, unlike the New Orleans Saints, we're going to keep going year-round because we are just that damn good. I am Bob Rose. I am your one of your co-hosts for your Bayou Blitz tonight. Joining me is my partner in crime and also somebody who doesn't know the meaning of the word postseason exit, Brendan Boylan. How are you tonight?
Had to throw that in there, right? Yeah, I don't have a lot of those. I don't have a lot of those on my resume.
Sadly, as a coach player, I do, but since that part of my career is over, I'm going to poke the hornet's nest, known as the New Orleans Saints, and see what I get. See if I get any fight out of Dennis Allen.
Oh man, yeah. I actually would have to sit back and think. Like since 2015, this is the fourth year I've covered the Saints where they haven't made the postseason. Mm-hmm. So I have a winning record, I guess.
You do.
But that's not saying much. I mean, we've had this conversation. I'm a young blood when it comes to all that. You know, the longtime reporters, the longtime fans, you guys got all of it and then some on me. So nonetheless, this really weird season is finally over. And I think, ironically, don't think there was a more fitting way to end the season than how the game played out.
Right.
On Sunday, it was for about 5 minutes of that game. Saints go down, they march. Olave, beautiful route, burns Josh Norman, who looked much older than 35 at times. Score a touchdown. You go, okay, Saints are going to roll. This is how it's going to be. It's going to be great. Defense is playing great. And, somehow, some way, the Saints lose to an opposing quarterback that threw for less than 50 yards and threw 2 picks. But, I know Dennis got asked about the offensive coaching staff already, and he said, they're going to sit and evaluate everything, but there's nothing to be said right now, which is the very coach-speaky way.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you expect somebody to say just a couple days after. The season endings, but I would not be surprised to see some major overhaul of the offensive staff. We'll talk more about that as we get in the off season, sure, and even tonight. But yeah, I think Sunday was a beautiful bow tied on the gift of the 22-23 season. It was very fitting the way that it ended. We have a lot to talk about today. The season's officially over. The Sean Payton trade talk is heating up, and I'll double check again because I was bad and didn't check before we got on the air, but I think that's what our loyal listeners want us to talk about. Yeah, 80% of you guys voted for Bob and I to discuss the potential Sean Payton trade compensation now that we have a list of 3 teams that have requested and have been granted permission to talk to Sean this offseason. So you guys are ready for us just to dive head first. I mean, we haven't even had 4 days off, and they want us to dive head first into the most dramatic part of the off season. But yeah, it's going to be a weird off season for New Orleans. I'm kind of glad it's here because the season was unpredictable.
Yeah.
It felt like they were, for me at least, Bob, I don't know about you, but for me, it felt like there were 3 seasons within one season. It felt like the beginning of the season, coming off the Atlanta win, the Saints could get rolling, and you had the 2 weeks, and then Jameis gets hurt. Mm-hmm. Okay, so like those first 3-4 games, that's season 1, and then you get, Andy Dalton, and then Mike Thomas is hurt, and Jarvis is hurt. You get all the injuries roll in, and you have that stretch up until that 3-game win streak, which felt like its own season. And then you throw in the Carolina game at the bitter end. But that's how it broke up for me. It felt like I covered 3 different teams this year in the course of, 17, 18 games, which I can't say I've had that experience covering the Saints yet.
Yeah, and it's especially if you're a fan of the team that you're covering, as you and I are of the New Orleans Saints, Brendan. you get emotionally involved. You get emotionally invested because we get to know these players. Former play in our case, where we are in the media food chain. In our cases, we have a much better relationship with the former players, but we have forged a relationship with a couple of the current players. Had the opportunity to interview them. A few of them either one-on-one or in a group setting. Locker room, press conferences, etc. So it's hard not to get emotionally involved, and that's what makes a year like this so difficult. Because I think the way that you put it, three seasons in one was very fitting, because a lot of people, myself included, opened up the year with playoff expectations. I mean, hell, I predicted them to make a Super Bowl run, if everything fell into place properly. It obviously did not fall into place properly. But yeah, I mean, to start the season, you come out, and speaking of emotion, you win game one like you did against Atlanta, then lose game two like you did against Tampa Bay. And then, like you said, the quarterback change, and, just the rash of mistakes, self-inflicted mistakes and breakdowns that cost them games, Carolina, Minnesota, Arizona, Cincinnati. So as we go into midseason, then you're starting to sit there, thinking, okay, when is this team going to turn it on? Is this team going to turn it on? I feel like I've been doing mathematical playoff scenarios for the last 7 or 8 weeks. Because, like you said, then they turned it on a little bit at the end, especially the defense, and made you realize, okay, well, if this team does make it into the playoffs, is this defense good enough to allow them to win a game or two? And then to end the way that you did with such a clunker, whereas I put it on Sunday when I tweeted out, I called it an embarrassment. And it is. It was it was embarrassing to cover. I know for a fact that a couple of those players are embarrassed to be associated with it. And Dennis Allen, although he didn't come across that way, he should have been embarrassed to coach it. At the very least, I think we're in for a very interesting, entertaining, and controversial offseason. And and I know we'll talk about this in a second, because this is the topic you guys wanted us to discuss. Do not expect the Sean Payton fiasco, and that's what it's going to turn into, to be resolved within the next week or two. This is still going to be a long, drawn-out process with all kinds of negotiations, rumors. I'll caution you guys this before Brendan and I start talking about it. And I'll only pat ourselves on the back a little bit here. Be very, 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 very careful who you follow and who you believe your news from. Because there's all going to be, I'm not going to mention any names because I'm more professional than some people. But there are going to be all kinds of people who will claim that they have sources that tell them Sean Payton is going here, Sean Payton is not going there. Be very careful who you follow, and take most of what you hear with a grain of salt. Us at the Saints News Network, I believe, are one of the more reliable sources. We will throw predictions out there, conjectures, opinions, but we'll let you know that they're predictions, conjectures, opinions. If we have something sourced, we'll tell you that it's sourced, or we'll say unconfirmed, things like that. So please, for your own sanity and for the sanity of everybody that is in these Facebook groups and on your Twitter page, be careful who you follow and listen to. You want to reach out to Brendan, myself, John Hendricks, Kyle Mosley, any of us at the Saints News Network, and ask, because I get them all the time during the season. Hey, I'm hearing this. What are you hearing? I'll be honest with you, and I'll just leave that there.
Yeah, I'll tell you guys this: the easiest thing on Twitter now, and the Twitter Blue, which I subscribed to for a month to see what it was about. I got my fake blue check mark and whatnot. But you guys do know, or if you don't know, you can click on the check mark. If you go to a person's profile and you click on that check mark, it'll tell you whether they're verified because they're, news, government, whatever that long list is for Twitter, or if it's because they subscribe to Twitter Blue. So please check that out. There's going to be a lot of people that spend $11, $12 a month for that check mark, to where when it comes through your feed, it looks like this is a verified source who has sources and info and whatnot.
I'm not one of the cool kids. I don't have a check mark. So
I'm not either. Like I said, I did the Twitter Blue thing to see what Elon was all about, but that's a different. Let's put it this way: I didn't renew it, so that's all you guys need to know. It's not worth $12 a month, guys. But nonetheless, be very careful with all of that. And what Bob echoed, I think all of us are pretty responsive on Twitter for the most part. Just reply to a tweet, shoot us a DM. Happy to share whatever we are hearing. But to agree with Bob too, this isn't going to be something where, Sean has a lot of leverage here, and it's really interesting. But Sean has a lot of leverage, but he doesn't. Like, I don't know a better way to describe that. He has the leverage in terms of going, these are the places I want to go.
Right.
So please grant me permission. And he's going to have to agree to be traded wherever the Saints trade him to. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the Saints are not in a position where they have to give in anything and everything. They could sit there. Let's say, I don't know, say a division rival calls. Carolina, who's interviewing a ton of people, calls and, hey, we want to interview Sean. The Saints could very well be like, no. And Sean might say, well, what if I wanted to take that interview? So here's 3 over here that are perfectly good interviews where we're not going to face this team twice a year and what have you. So it's going to be a long, drawn-out thing. It's also, compensation is going to be something that takes a long time.
Yeah.
And here's why. This isn't like a player trade. And player trades are less, and we're seeing less and less players being traded in the NFL. At least I think.
I disagree. I think we've been seeing more players get traded. That's another story for another time.
But trade compensation for players is a lot easier to look and say, okay, well, this player got traded. You're of this equal talent. We want this back. There's not a long list of coaches that have been traded. There are some very notable names on that list. But also trade compensation has changed over the many decades that we can look at. I mean, you look at Belichick and what Parcells drew. Well, that was a completely different time period than it is today. You even going back to when Gruden was traded. Mm-hmm. It's a very different NFL today than it was in the early and mid 2000s. So that's going to be an interesting phase of it as well. And, Sean and the Saints are going to have to talk, because Sean might say, hey, I'm really comfortable if you trade me to either one or two of these teams. And the Saints are going to have to call and go, hey, Arizona, hey, Denver, hey, whoever, what's your offer? And then be able to go to Sean, well, this is the best offer we have. This is where we want to trade you. And then Sean's going to have to sign off. I mean, there's so many different hoops that need to be jumped through in this process that it's going to be long. It's going to be drawn out. Now we may know where he's going a little earlier than people may expect, but the compensation coming back, I think that's going to be the one thing that holds everything up. And Houston was the weird one on that list, because in my mind, I'm thinking, why would Sean want to go to Houston? He doesn't. They don't have a quarterback, nothing, right? But when you look at potential compensation back, Houston would make a lot of sense because they have 2 first-round draft picks. So there's all those things that have to be figured in this. So I guess this is a good segue into, Bob, in your opinion, what is Sean Payton worth?
Well, the last 3 coaches to be traded are John Gruden. John Gruden was the last one, I believe. Sorry, I drew a blank. Bill Belichick and Bill Parcells. What's interesting to note is that in all 3 of those cases, the coach that was traded for took their team. Well, in Belichick's case, he won a Super Bowl. Gruden's case, he won a Super Bowl. Parcells' case, he got to an AFC championship in his second year there, I believe. So, all of those coaches have had instant success, pretty much instant success where they've gone. All of them fetched at least a first round draft choice. So I think that you start there. Sean Payton is a Super Bowl winning coach. Sean Payton is a perennial playoff coach. So, and that's why Sean Payton is attracting so much interest on the open market. Or not the open, but you guys know what I mean. So I do think that you start with a first round pick, but there's a few things to consider. I know, people were all excited, when Arizona, and first of all, I'm going to pat myself on the back yet again. Everybody who said that I was crazy way back in July when I said I expect Sean Payton to end up one of these two or three places, and Arizona has always been one of them for me. Y'all said I was crazy at the time until last month when Sean Payton's name started getting linked with the Arizona Cardinals. Well, those of you that are getting excited because Arizona has the number 3 overall pick, or that Houston has the number 2 overall pick, guys, those picks aren't the ones that are going to be traded for Sean Payton. It's not that he's not worth it. I mean, that is up to beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's this. Why would Sean Payton want to go to an organization that's willing to give up their top 5 draft pick for the first year that he is coming to that team? Answer, he's not. Payton himself is on record as saying, everybody assumes, and correctly so, that quarterback is going to be, an answer to the quarterback position is going to be very important to Sean Payton wherever he goes. Payton has also said, front office and ownership culture is just as important to me. There's 2 ways to take that, and I think both ways are accurate. Number one, he had a very close relationship with Mickey Loomis. So Sean Payton is going to want to have, and this is going to be so poorly worded, but I'm going to say it anyway. Sean Payton is going to want to have a general manager and a front office that's wrapped around his finger, because he wants to have the power. Number 2, Sean Payton doesn't want to work for an idiotic organization, such as one that would be willing to give up a number 2 or number 3 overall draft pick while they're trying to rebuild for their brand new coach named Sean Payton. So the compensation I expect to ultimately be, I think that I know that New Orleans is going to ask for at least 1 first-round draft choice along with other draft compensation. It would not surprise me. First of all, if somebody like Denver, and Denver is involved, if it's somebody like Denver, you're talking a draft pick that could be anywhere between the 23rd overall pick and the 32nd overall pick, depending on when the San Francisco 49ers season ends. The Houston Texans, their second number 1 draft choice that they have this year, I believe sits at number 11 or number 12. That's probably more realistic as far as where the first round draft choice, reasonable first round draft choice compensation is going to come. I think it's entirely possible that the team that ends up with Sean Payton gives the New Orleans Saints a number 2 draft choice this year and a number 1 draft choice in 2024. That's kind of where my thinking. I hope I'm wrong, because I would love to get that number 2 or number 3 overall draft pick. I don't see that being a real life, real world scenario.
No, it might be a Madden scenario. But
sure. And a lot of these people live in Madden world.
That's true. I just don't see that happening either. Houston's interesting with the number 12 pick, if they would be willing to move 12. But I don't see Sean wanting to go to Houston.
No.
There's nothing about that job that's really attractive. They don't have a quarterback. Brandon Cooks wants out and has wanted out. And Sean and Brandon Cooks have a relationship already that, if you guys recall, did not end extremely well.
Right.
So why would you want to go through that again?
Well, I mean, you're looking at a Houston team with other than quarterback, with tons of holes to fill.
Yes.
And Sean doesn't want to be in a complete rebuild situation. He understands, he's not dumb. Wherever he goes, they're looking for a coach for a reason. But if you're talking someplace like the Chargers, the Cardinals, who are 1 year removed from a playoff berth, the Raiders, and I'm just throwing out hypothetical. Josh McDaniels, although he should have been, he has not been fired. But the Raiders are 1 year removed from a playoff berth. The Broncos are a historical franchise with historical success. It's those kind of things. The Houston Texans check none of those boxes.
No, and Denver's interesting because if anybody can turn Russell Wilson around, I think it's Sean Payton, the quarterback whisperer. I was really interested in Arizona as well for these reasons. Obviously, next year is kind of like a gap year because you're not going to have Kyler Murray. So that gives Sean a year to build everything and not have the expectations of, oh, this has got to be a playoff team. Mm-hmm. I think that's interesting. 1. 2, the news that broke this week with DeAndre Hopkins likely being traded out. Could Nuke be a part of that trade package to go back to New Orleans? That with a team that needs receiver help, that's interesting as well. But does Sean want to give up his number 1 target? There's a whole lot of hypotheticals there.
Yep.
But they have a quarterback in place, a very talented young quarterback. It's a talented roster, even though they got some guys, some guy named J.J. Watt, is leaving as well and hanging it up. They have a talented roster. They're not that far removed. And it was just a couple years ago where people were singing the praises of Kyler Murray and Cliff. And now Cliff's available, which is interesting as well.
Mm-hmm.
The Saints aren't getting a new head coach. Just want to throw that out there. Dennis Allen's going to be back, but it's interesting.
But and Arizona's interesting too. I mean, consider. I know Houston has asked for permission to talk to him. I can't see, other than NFC South teams, I can't see Sean Payton outright publicly saying no. I'm not even going to talk to you to too many franchises. But I don't think the Houston Texans are a realistic scenario at all. I equate that with winning the lottery twice in the same week. Kind of odds. The Denver Broncos, they have a general manager in place, one that they really like. The Arizona Cardinals have cleaned house. Kingsbury is gone, like you said, but Kelm, the general manager, has also been relieved of duties. I think we have seen the days come and go where a coach is going to want to come in and be titled coach, general manager. It's too much for one person to do. But again, Sean Payton wants to have a close relationship with the general manager. So I can't see Mickey Loomis leaving New Orleans, even if it is with Sean Payton, because the two of them remain very close. But what about Sean Payton lands in Arizona and Jeff Ireland goes with him, leaves New Orleans to go with him? I mean, it's that kind of scenario that I could see playing out. Do not rule out the Chargers or Cowboys. I know they were everybody's favorites way back in the preseason. Cowboys weren't mine, but the Chargers were in my top 2 or 3, right after Arizona. I expect both of those coaches, Brandon Staley and certainly Mike McCarthy, to be on very, very hot seats if their respective teams lose in the first round of the playoffs this weekend. So do not rule them out of the Sean Payton sweepstakes either.
Yeah, the Chargers are interesting because of how highly Sean has talked about Herbert, how high Drew Brees has talked about Herbert, and the fact that Drew was out there with Justin in the offseason and singing his praises too. This is me just being hypothetical and just throwing something out there. But, Drew did make his coaching debut. It was not a pretty one, but he made his coaching debut. Nonetheless, could I see Sean go to a place like the Chargers, a place where Drew still has a home and Drew still lives, and be like, hey, would you like to come on and do the whole like internship coaching thing 1 year and then potentially bring him onto the staff the next?
Oh, Brendan, I've already predicted. I already predicted before that bowl game that Purdue allegedly played in, that was just to get Drew's feet wet, and that the next career move for Drew Brees, if Sean Payton coaches in 2023, and that's not off the table either, by the way. But if Sean Payton coaches in 2023, my prediction is that Drew Brees will be somewhere on his staff. It won't be as an offensive coordinator or anything like that, not to start. Quarterback coach, offensive consultant, that kind of thing. But that's where I predict. That's what I predict is going to happen if Sean Payton coaches in 2023. And like you said, the Chargers. Sean's kids live out there. Drew and Brittany have a home out there. The Chargers have an offensive coordinator by the name of Joe Lombardi that both Sean Payton and Drew Brees are mildly familiar with. And they both absolutely love Justin Herbert.
Yeah, I think a lot of things could fall into place. I think the last that you said too, if they wanted to create, what's the saying from one of my favorite TV shows of all time, How I Met Your Mother. There's a line in there that says if you take 3 business sounding words and you put them together, you have a fake job title. If you did like offensive passing game consultant, like that is a Drew Brees job right there. Just make it up. Throw 3 offensive words together and let Drew be that guy. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. You said Dallas, and this is the one thing. I think Dallas as well, because they've been right there the last couple years, is intriguing. They have a really good defense. The offensive line is not what it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Ezekiel Elliott has taken – it's weird because some weeks I'm like, man, this guy's lost a step. And then the next week it's, wow, Ezekiel Elliott looks good again. And then Tony Pollard's came on and been really well. Dak Prescott, think what you will of him. I think he is a really good quarterback as a game manager, an elevated game manager, if you will. I don't think he's going to be on that elite top tier quarterback type of level, but everything's there. If Sean wants to go in and find immediate success, except the fact I don't see Sean wanting to play in Jerry's world. I see Sean wanting to take over Jerry's world and make it Sean world. And that's just the type of personality that Sean is. And I don't see that relationship happening. So I've never had the Cowboys very close on that. I still think the Chargers are a dark horse. I personally don't see them going very far. I think there's a lot of holes to fill on that roster, but they have the quarterback.
Yeah.
And a quarterback that I was shocked when he decided to go back to Oregon for his senior year, because he was going to be the number 1 quarterback taken if he decided to come out. So he bet on himself. He ended up falling and being like the 7th pick of the draft. And shoot, he might be the best quarterback from that draft class. But nonetheless, there's going to be a lot to go with Sean. Going back to the original, what compensation can the Saints expect? I fully expect a first-round pick, whether it's this year, next year, what have you. And then from there, just seeing how creative teams want to get. I look back, and I believe Parcells was a 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. I think Gruden was like a 1st, a 2nd.
And a bunch of cash.
Yeah, something like that. Teams are going to have to get creative after 1st round. And that's why I threw out there too. I mean, I don't think it's realistic. I don't think it's actually going to happen. But, we just talked about living in Madden worlds. If Arizona wanted to throw Hopkins in a 1st and some day 3 picks, would you say no? I don't think I would.
No. Well, here's something too, Brendan. Unless the NFL decides to amend this, and we joke about Madden's world, we're living in Goodell's world too, so all bets are off.
True.
Love you, little guy. As it stands right now, a player players cannot be involved in trade compensation for coach or coaches.
Yeah, they could figure that out.
Well, that's if you. My question would be, and I don't know the answer to this. If you involve players and coaches on the one side, can players from the other side, along with draft picks, cash, or whatever else, be involved?
I think it would be like separate trades. You make 2 separate trades and kind of make it work to where everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Maybe you just go Sean for a 1st and a 3rd, and then separately trade player A for player B.
Right.
Make the
Where
money
where
work.
it's unrelated, but
Right.
yeah, exactly.
Exactly. I don't know at the end of the day, I don't know what's going to happen. I think, like I said, I think teams are going to have to get creative after, the first round pick. Sean's going to have to want to go wherever he wants to go. And that's going to be the biggest story this offseason.
Sure. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of subterfuge from the New Orleans side. I don't, unlike what some people think, I don't think that Sean Payton intentionally set out to screw the New Orleans Saints when he stepped away in the first place. I do think that he recognizes, given his relationship with the Benson family and Mickey Loomis, I do think that Sean recognizes that he's in a unique position. If he decides to coach and if he sees an opportunity that he likes for himself, that he's going to sit down with Mickey Loomis and they're going to develop a strategy together and say, this is what we're going to, you're going to see stories floated out. Maybe from Sean Payton's representatives, maybe from Payton, maybe from Loomis, but you're going to see different stories and speculations get floated out to try to drive up the price from the other teams teams that Sean Payton is legitimately interested in going to. So, folks, the more teams that get involved in this, the better it is for the New Orleans Saints in the end.
Oh, absolutely. And it was a couple weeks ago, it might have been a month ago now, where there were some reports that, Sean could always come back to New Orleans. I think things like that got leaked out intentionally too, because that drives his price up. Yeah, is it going to happen? No. Bob and I would more than likely put together a boatload of cash, like Mattress Mac down in Texas, who's lost like $9 million betting against Georgia the last 2 years. Bob and I don't have that, but we'd put up a mountain of cash that Sean's not going to be coaching in New Orleans next year. I think we'd be okay with our bet, because it's not. I do not see a world where that happens. I don't see a multiverse where that's even a possibility. But that stuff gets leaked because it's going to drive up his price. And like Bob said, the more teams that Sean takes meetings with, the more and more that price goes up because there's more people interested. I don't want to teach like a business class here, but supply and demand. There's only one Sean Payton. If there's a ton of people who want the one Sean Payton, you're going to have to pay for it. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, there's only a handful of teams that are going to be looking for a new coach. But if you could get every team that's looking for a new coach involved, you could ask for a lot for Sean. I think that's enough Sean Payton talk for today, because that's going to be one that we talk about all off season long.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll be with you guys every Wednesday. I can't believe all of you want to hear us talk every Wednesday. I appreciate it. It still baffles me, though. Let's talk about the team. And you know what? Let's go ahead and just knock out. You guys voted that you wanted us to talk about Sean. Let's talk about everything that we threw up on that poll. We talked about Sean the longest, though, so you're welcome. It's also my favorite segment. I love talking about whatever you guys want us to talk about. It makes our jobs easier. We don't have to prep as much. We just go, that's what they want us to talk about. Cool.
And we do prep. It might not seem like it, folks, but we do prep.
We do, but that's one less segment I got to prep for. It's like, whew, all right, cool. But let's talk about, I don't want to just say the season as a whole, and what we threw on the poll obviously was, your biggest disappointments and your biggest surprises. And we've talked a little bit about that over the last couple weeks. We talked about how it felt like 3 seasons in 1 season. So I kind of want to ask you this, is going into the off season, give me a player offensively and a player defensively that you fully expect not to be back, whether that's cap, whether that's retirement, whether that's it just didn't work. Give me a player from the offense and the defense.
Offense is easy, and I think that there's going to be a few names here. Do you want me to take the easy road out, or do you want me to be a little controversial?
Bob, listen, if anybody's the controversial one, it's me. You're the controversial one. I'm the one who takes the easy route. So let's trade roles tonight. You can take the easy route.
Okay.
I'll be controversial.
I'll go the easy way out on offense. Jameis Winston's not going to be back in a New Orleans Saints uniform. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, and I'm certainly not saying that I agree with it. But that writing was on the wall about week 6 or 7 of this year. Once Jameis was pretty much declared healthy, and Dennis Allen never gave him even a second thought through the rest of the regular season. I know you folks wanted DA's head for a lot of reasons, that being one of them. It's as simple as this. Jameis Winston is not Dennis Allen's guy. He never was. Dennis felt more comfortable with Andy Dalton, and that's at the first opportunity. That's who he jumped with and stayed with. Andy's going to be a free agent this offseason. I personally believe that there's a fairly decent chance that Dalton will be back in New Orleans, on a reasonable, probably 1-year deal as a backup quarterback. Jameis Winston signed a 2-year deal this offseason, but it's a very easy deal for the team and Jameis to get out of this offseason. It was constructed that way to begin with to benefit both parties. That way, if Jameis balled out in 2022, that the Saints wouldn't have to worry about a bidding war to retain him in 2023 while they negotiated a long-term contract. By contrast, if Jameis had a poor year, and I'm not saying he had a poor year because we didn't see enough out of him to make that judgment. But if Jameis had a poor year, then the Saints could say, okay, well, now we can move on from him, start our quarterback drawing board from the beginning without too much of a cap hit. And that's where we are right now. I believe the Saints are going to probably try to trade Jameis Winston for whatever they can get for him. The more likely, more realistic scenario is that they'll release Jameis, just before the start of free agency, and they'll only take a $7 million cap hit, which is a lot of money to normal people, but mere pennies in the gutter, to the Saints and their cap gurus. So it's for me offensively, it's Jameis Winston that is definitely not going to be back in a Saints uniform in 2023.
Going to be interesting if they can field calls, or if they do field any calls about trading for Jameis. I mean, we've seen quarterbacks go for next to nothing. I mean, look at the Baker Mayfield deal that sent him to Carolina. I mean, the Browns paid most of the contract.
Yep.
And they got a draft pick in return or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see if the Saints try to get at least something back for Jameis Winston. Ooh, I have to be controversial. Okay. I think there's a lot of easy ways to go on the offense. I think one that you and I said would 100% be back because of the contract that kind of got thrown around a little bit because of the restructure is Michael Thomas. And so I don't know if it's really that controversial. It would have been controversial if I said it before the restructure, because you would be thinking, why would the Saints eat all that money?
Yeah.
But I don't think Mike's going to be back. And it's unfortunate more than anything. I don't think it's anything more than that. Yeah, there's a damaged relationship there for a number of reasons. The number one being the fact that the dude's been hurt for 3 years, and I'm willing to bet a good bit of that goes back to the coaching, or not the coaching staff, but the medical staff. And the fact that they wanted him to kind of just rehab it and see what happened, and it got worse and what have you. It's unfortunate because the games he did play in this year, he wasn't 2019 Michael Thomas, but he was a damn good wide receiver in those games.
Hell yeah.
And that's all the Saints needed from him. They didn't need him to go out and catch 140, plus almost 150 passes. They just needed him to come up big when they did. I mean, if you want to throw the tape on of Atlanta, prime example, I think he only had 4 catches in that game, but 2 of them were for touchdowns. He had big moments. You can throw Jarvis Landry on that list. That's an easy one too. That's not going to be back. But Mike's not going to be back simply because money. If it was a more team friendly deal, I think that both sides would just try to ride it out the way that it is. And I don't think Michael Thomas is going to have a really big market.
No,
because he hasn't played. Somebody's going to take a flyer on him.
Oh yeah. He'll end up somewhere. He's not going to be a street free agent.
Right. Somebody's going to throw a day 3 pick and say, we'll take they'll take a guy who's, man, we're going on 4 years removed from being the offensive player of the year. Somebody will take the flyer on him, but he's not going to be back because of that. And like I said, it's unfortunate because when he was healthy, 18, 19, man, he was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And for anybody, and I have to just throw it out there because I saw the tweets at the beginning of the year, and I never really got a chance to address it, so might as well address it now. Ton of people saying, man, he signed that contract and that was it. Like, he signed his contract, he got his money, and then he didn't have the heart to play, or whatever those tweets, whether people watching tweeted that, whether people watching and listening know exactly what I'm talking about. First off, get your facts right.
Yeah.
Because he signed that contract after the 18 season, which means his first season under that contract, he broke NFL records. 2020, we all know what happened. Tried to come back, played through the pain because it was, Drew's last year, and he came out and publicly said that if it wasn't Drew's last ride, probably wasn't going to try to do that, but because he knew that they had the opportunity, he played through the pain. And so I can't question the guy's heart. I hate that he got some rough breaks over the last 3 years. But if you ask me, just 2019 alone earned just about every penny of that contract extension because he single-handedly was the Saints offense that year. So no Mike Thomas disrespect in terms of, getting the bag and checking out, because he didn't. I hate he's checking out, or more than likely going to check out the way that he is, because he was on pace to be the best receiver in franchise history. But injuries are a part of the game. You know that, Bob. So that's my controversial, quote unquote, Saint that won't be back offensively.
Okay. Defensively, look, I do not want to address the elephants in the room. Demario Davis and Cam Jordan are going to be the speculation. Received much speculation that they could be one or both of them could be cap casualties. They'll both be 34 years old before the start of next season. They're both carrying hefty contracts, and the Saints once again have to juggle some numbers just to get under the salary cap. I can't bring myself to predict that either one of these legends are going to be released yet, so I'm not going to go out on that limb. On the flip side, I think it's a very easy call to say that Marcus Davenport is not going to be in a New Orleans Saints uniform. Davenport in a contract year had his worst statistical production. And he is going to command a fairly big contract on the open market. And honestly, folks, he's probably going to get it. And the Saints just aren't in position to pay that, nor would they want to, for someone who has been other than last season, been a colossal disappointment. And I also don't think David Onyemata is going to be back either. With him, I think it depends on the contract demands. He's the type of player the Saints could feel comfortable letting him explore the open market and then just throwing him an offer. And if that offer is as good or better than what he has received out there, then Dio could be back. My prediction is the Saints safeties, I called them abysmal every week. I feel like every week through the first portion of the year. Tyrann Mathieu improved dramatically down the stretch. The other guy did not, because he was injured most of the year. I think the Saints are going to move on from one of their two big name offseason safety acquisitions from last year. And my hunch is going to be that it's Marcus May. Because just like Alvin Kamara on the offensive side, Marcus May avoided a suspension that a lot of us thought would be coming this year. It's only postponing the inevitable, folks. Marcus May, and for that matter, Alvin Kamara, are going to receive league punishment that's going to involve a multi-game suspension. And Marcus May, when he was on the field, he just wasn't a difference maker this year. In both the case of Mathieu and May, the team, they both signed 2-year contracts this offseason. But in the case of each player, there is very little dead cap penalty to the Saints if they move on from one of these guys. And I've said already, yeah, I've been calling it since midseason that safety is a major position that needs to be addressed for New Orleans this offseason. So I don't think they'll release both veterans, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that they'll release one. My hunch is Marcus May. And let him hit the open market and try to find another starter at that position, either in free agency and or through the draft.
Man, Bob, you stole mine. That was the controversial one for me too, was Marcus May. 2-year contracts. We talked about it just a couple weeks ago. I felt like he's missed as many games as he played, like he'd take a week to play and miss the following. You made a great point with the looming suspension. Yeah, to you or me or to somebody watching or listening or a fan, you might say 4 games isn't a lot. Well, I mean, the dude missed 9 or 10 games this year. Throw another 4 for suspension. I mean, what are you really getting out of that 2-year contract? I'm going to say Tyrann Mathieu safe. I'll be the first to admit that I was really critical of him at the beginning of the year. You and I both said safety was going to be the position that took the longest, though. Just because you're not replacing just one of the positions on the back end, but they replaced both in communication and chemistry, and the fact that Marcus May was hurt. I think there was a major learning curve there, but Tyrann Mathieu ended up being a really good signing, especially down the stretch for the Saints in my book. He came up with big plays down the stretch.
He did.
Those last 4 or 5 weeks, especially. He looked like a Tyrann Mathieu of old, and I think he's going to be safe on that. I believe, especially the way that Cameron Jordan has interacted on social media, and he was with Kay Adams earlier today as well. He wants to be in New Orleans. I think that's going to work out, especially with a player like that. I'm a firm believer too when you have guys that are franchise guys that come out and make it publicly known that they want to be there. One of the worst things you could do for reputation, not just to your fan base, but to other guys that you drafted, is letting go of someone like that and not fighting to keep them there.
Right. And admittedly, it is poor PR for a Saints team that is struggling a little bit in that department right now. But we also know more than the average person that this is a business. And we do see that in the league every year. Let me ask you this, Brendan. If it's one player, Cam Jordan or Demario Davis, that get released for salary cap reason, and I called them legends before, and I'm going to stand by that. Cam Jordan, in my opinion, is a Hall of Famer. Demario Davis, if he retired tomorrow, he's not, unfortunately, because I love the man. He's not Canton destined, but I believe he's going to be in the Saints franchise Hall of Fame. So I'm willing to call him a franchise legend. If the Saints are going to release one of these two legendary players this offseason, which one do you see it more likely being?
Putting me in the hot seat. I wouldn't want to release either. But
I don't want to. I mean, I would be extremely upset if either gets released.
I think the one that would be more likely, and this is without me sitting and looking at cap and numbers and whatnot, I think it's Demario Davis, and here's why. I wouldn't say released, easier to trade. I think to maybe a contending team that needs a piece. Coming off of his first Pro Bowl, which is wild to me. That's another discussion for another time. First Pro Bowl. But I think the depth behind him is my main reason for saying that. You just brought up Marcus Davenport, which, he's been playing opposite of Cam, but if you want to talk about edge depth, after that, it's like, well, there's Carl Granderson, who's had nice moments. You have Payton Turner, who hasn't lived up to that first round either. And he's very much like a Marcus Davenport clone in terms of athleticism and speed and height and all that.
I got to question the Spider-Man Peter Parker theory. I don't recall seeing Payton Turner and Marcus Davenport in the same place at the same time.
There was one game last season that they were both active. I do remember that because it was like the only game they were both active last season. But I think when I look at linebacker, Pete Warner, when healthy, was very, very good this year. And Caden Ellis, who's a guy you've been a fan of for a long time, really came on strong. So if the Saints had to pick between those two guys, and Caden Ellis is going to be a free agent as well, which that was going to be my shocking one. So sorry for the spoilers, but Bob threw me off guard with another question. If there's a defensive player that was not going to come back, it was going to be Caden Ellis. Because
you think it's a strong chance he won't get re-signed?
I don't think the Saints. I think there's going to be an offer that the Saints are not going to be able to match for him. I think there's going to be somebody crazy enough to throw a ton of money at him.
Well, you know what? It happened with Trey Hendrickson, and I thought that there was a fairly good chance, because Trey had his breakout year in 2020. I thought around midseason, even 2/3 of the way through the season, I thought that there was a pretty strong possibility that the Saints would be able to afford to re-sign Trey Hendrickson. And as it turned out, I mean, Trey just kept playing better and better and better, like we saw with Caden Ellis. And you all know that the Cincinnati Bengals ended up backing up the Brinks truck for old Trey. You might see that same kind of thing happen with Caden Ellis. I mean, I hope you're wrong, but you're not out of the ballpark at all.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a team that sees young linebacker potential. He was racking up the tackles throughout the year, forced fumbles, big plays. I could see somebody, I don't want to say breaking the bank, but making it to the point where the Saints are uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And they have to question it. And so it's going to be one of those, okay, they might be put in a situation, okay, are we keeping DeMario or are we keeping Cam? Okay, well, if we cut DeMario, we have to re-sign Kate. And there's going to be so many different gears and so many different things that are going to have to be discussed. But I like the depth behind DeMario better than I like the depth behind Cam right now. So if I had to pick one or the other, I'd say DeMario would be the one. Personally, I don't think either of them are going anywhere. I want to go ahead and get that off. I don't think either of them are going anywhere, especially with how good this defense was down the stretch and how much that veteran leadership is going to be valued between Cam Jordan, DeMario Davis, and even Tyrann Mathieu. You talk about having leadership in every level. I think that's vital for a defense to be as successful as the Saints defense was. Remember, Bob, you brought it up on Sunday at halftime and in the pregame show that, you talk about a defense that set a franchise record for consecutive games, holding a team under 20 points at 6. So defense was really good. I don't see a whole lot of pieces moving around, but yeah, if I had to pick one, it's going to be DeMario, and my surprise, controversial defensive player that's not going to be back is going to be Caden Ellis because somebody's going to overpay. I don't want to say overpay. That's not the right word, but somebody's going to make it uncomfortable for the Saints to match, essentially.
That's a good one. And I've said for several weeks now, there are two pending free agents for the Saints that I really want to see them make a strong push at keeping. Caden Ellis is at the top of that list. And the only reason he's at the top, and I have Juwan Johnson at number 2. The Saints sort of hold all the cards with Juwan Johnson. Juwan is a restricted free agent. So really all they really have to do is make a tendered offer to him. Other teams that might price him out of the market for other teams, or at the very least give the Saints an opportunity to either match another team's offer or receive a certain slotted draft pick as compensation in return. But basically, of the list of free agents, and there are some very interesting names. We both already mentioned Caden Ellis, David Onyemata, Shai Tuttle, Kentavious Street. There's not a defensive tackle that's under contract as of right now. To me, I take my chances with all those guys on the open market. To no Passanio too. The two guys I prioritize are Caden Ellis and Juwan Johnson.
Has to be, especially how well Juwan played this year. The jump that he made this year, which is the one that I didn't see coming. I expected him to be a red zone threat because of his size, his leaping ability. I didn't expect to see him overtake Adam Troutman as the Saints' number one receiving tight end option, which, like I said a couple weeks ago, I mean, this opens up the door for Troutman to slide into a Josh Hill type role,
Sure.
which I think fits him a lot better. And you can have a long, good NFL career. I mean, Josh Hill did in a role like that and come up with some, big touchdowns. Josh definitely did. I mean, you talk about in 20 years when you ask somebody, well, when Drew Brees broke the all-time passing touchdowns record, who caught the pass? Your average person's not going to guess Josh Hill. But nonetheless, I am agreeing with you. I do think because of what you said with Juwan being restricted, it makes it easier for the Saints to hold the cards and let it play out than it does for a guy like Caden. Before we continue on, Bob, I do want to talk about this with the off season. You and I are going to have so much to talk about over the next couple weeks, next couple months, obviously leading up to the draft. Do the Saints get a first round pick? There's going to be a lot of things. We want to hear from you about what you want us to talk about week in and week out, not just segments, but shoot, with how vital this offseason is going to be and how this offseason could really shape the direction that the Saints are going to be going over the next 2, 3, 4 years, we want you guys to tell us everything you want to hear. We throw a poll up. You don't see something you want us to talk about, throw it in the comments. We want to know what you guys want to hear. Bob and I could sit here and talk. We could have easily taken today just the Sean Payton. We could have stretched that an hour. Easy. And if that's what you guys want us to do, tell us that's what you want us to do. We will happily talk about whatever this offseason. There's so much to talk about.
And we're gonna have guests on. We've talked with Jim Everett, Quinn Early, Irv Smith. They've all talked about coming back on with us. It's just a matter of getting schedule, timing. Because we love to hear those guys. Willie Whitehead did such a fantastic job last week. We know how good Tyrone Hughes is. Other players, current and former. We're trying to be able to give the proper respect to those guys and their past careers too. I am such a football historian. That's my favorite part of getting to know these guys. But we also want to get their. We don't want the news of the day, whether it's Sean Payton, free agency, whatever the case may be. We don't want the news of the day to overshadow, the honor of having a guest on with us. But we're going to try to intermix those guests on with breaking news, editorial opinions, things like that too. But I echo what Brendan said. We love to hear from you guys too. We tell you week in and week out that this is your show, and we truly mean that. And I think we show that with our actions, and you guys show it with your actions back to us too. When we ask for feedback, you've done a great job of giving it to us.
Absolutely. John Butler said he wants to hear us do a duet. Not happening. Not happening.
I'd be willing to do that, but
I will make your guys' ears bleed. I am tone deaf. I have no rhythm. That's just asking for a disaster. But I mean, shoot, if I throw it up on the poll and it gets the most votes, I guess that's what we're doing. So John, if you want me to next week, I'll throw on the poll, have Bob and Brendan do a duet on the Saints 22-23 season. We will have, that would be a very dark song, wouldn't it? We could actually have a pretty fun time with that. That's the other thing too. I want to have fun. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things to get to. There's a lot of things, like, I don't want to say uncomfortable things to talk about, but there's a lot of uncertainty with the Saints' future. And as a fan, hearing that from Bob and I and other analysts that we have on and other guests and former players, I mean, it might put you in a spot where you're like, oh man, like, this really stinks, but we want to have fun. We want to keep it open. I mean, throw suggestions out there. Bob and I did an episode earlier this year where we talked about the 2011 team. I mean, we can go back and talk about different teams, obviously. Try to do a better job of letting you guys know which guests we have ahead of time. And maybe you want to talk about a specific moment or a specific game that they played in. Absolutely. We'll We'll do that. Oh, here's a good one, Bob. We'll just take this question because I think it's a good one. Favorite go-to food or drink during a game inside the Superdome? I don't eat at stadiums.
No.
I cannot afford to eat at stadiums. I'm just gonna be honest with you guys. Like, even in Charlotte, where I have basketball season tickets, you know how expensive it is to eat like a hot dog at a stadium nowadays? I was baffled, Bob. I don't drink at all. And my girlfriend and I were at a G League game, so like a minor league basketball game, and she got like a White Claw or a Truly, like a sparkling seltzer, whatever. Thing was like $11 for a 16-ounce can. That blew, and I might sound crazy, but that blew my mind. $11 for a 16-ounce can. So no, I'm sorry, Jimmy. I don't really got anything for you because I can't afford to, even when I'm out that way. I just can't.
Listen, back in the day, and I've been sober for a little over 15 years now. And back in the day, the drink of the day the drink for me was beer, no doubt about it. Whether I was watching a game at a bar, at home, or at the stadium. Now, at the stadium, as Brendan said, tickets cost money, so I'd never have any more than just a couple of beers, because I didn't want my memory of the ticket that I paid for to be all fuzzy. Now, you get me in a bar, get me at home, that's a completely different story. These days, for the last 15 years, if I'm at home, I usually get too worked up, and emotional to eat. Plus, I'm working, so I won't really have anything to eat. I'll munch something before the game real quick. Depending on the result of the game, I'll eat right after the game. But during the game, I'll just drink coffee or water. If I'm at a game, especially if I'm at a game with my wife Lauren, we'll get nachos, and I think she had a White Claw the couple of games that we went to this year together. I had most likely, if I know me, most likely water. The games that I cover in the press box, they feed us. So you run there between for pregame, or run there for halftime, and then I have my water during the game. So yeah, I go pretty light because I'm so focused. Focused on the work itself.
Man, when I did college football, the best thing was when they'd feed you. And so when I did college football, 9 times out of 10, we had Chick-fil-A there in the press box. So I would grab one sandwich before the game, one at halftime, and one to take home. So sometimes you're eating like 2 or 3 a day. Sometimes the one you take home, you throw in the fridge, you have it for breakfast in the morning or whatever. There's some basketball tournaments. That's the other thing. You want to talk about food for media tournaments when you're there all
media
day.
And coaches too. It's the same thing with volleyball tournaments.
Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Those were the best because they would cater whatever the best restaurant was in town. And 9 times out of 10, it wasn't like, oh, there's an Olive Garden down the street. It's right. Like local food from some mom and pop's restaurant. Those are the things I miss about doing the really long days with ESPN and whatnot, is sometimes they would feed you extremely well. So yeah, really long-winded answer about food. We can talk about food. I like food. You ask John Hendricks every time he comes to Charlotte. You ask John. I've never missed when I've picked him up, after the game or whatnot. Take him out to a restaurant before we go back to the hotel. Oh, I make sure you when you and Lauren are in town, I will make sure you guys eat well in the Queen City for sure.
And yet, when you and your friend Art were here and we're passing through the Pittsburgh area, where'd we end up eating? Bob Evans. Now, I love Bob Evans. Do not get me wrong, but all up and down that stretch where Bob Evans is, you had the best wings I've ever had in Wing Suds and Spuds. You had the famous Permani brothers, where you could have had, and you should have seen John Hendricks' face Lauren and I met him for dinner right after the Saints Buccaneers game this past year. The one in New Orleans. And we're describing the time in a restaurant because I knew John was going to come into Pittsburgh, later that year. And I described the Permane sandwich, and they're famous for. You can get a fried egg on it too if you want, if you really want to shoot your cholesterol up. But they're famous for putting fries and coleslaw on their sandwiches. And he looks at me, and you mean on the side? No, they put them on the sandwich. So you eat them on the sandwich. What do they leave off of this? Nothing. The sandwich is like that thick. Beautiful. And you have to kind of tilt your head and squeeze it, but squeeze it away from your body. Otherwise, you'll be wearing the coleslaw juice down the front of your shirt. But after the Steelers game, I picked him up I took him to the airport, and we had lunch on that Monday after the game, and he admitted to me when I dropped him off. When I dropped him off at the hotel after that night's game, I asked him if he was hungry, but we ate like 3 meals a day at the stadium. When I picked him up on Monday, he admitted that he walked across the street and had to have a Permane's because he had to see what all the fuss was about. So he came. Next time you are in Pittsburgh, I will make sure I either get you to Wing Suds and Spuds or Permane Brothers or Burgatory.
We'll make it happen. I'm a sucker for local food. We went from football to food at the games to food near our houses. Let's wrap this all back up, get it back in, but then get
I'm
out.
Tired.
We're tired when we start rambling on about food. But no, John, I've taken him to Cabo Fish Taco, one of my favorite places in the world. Amelie's French Bakery. He embarrassed me because he lives down in New Orleans. He's talking, he's got the French lingo down. He's sitting there at the counter ordering like he's from France. And then we went to Pinky's, which is it's like a diners, drive-in and dive type of place. And that's a really good spot in Charlotte too. So when you guys come to Charlotte, I'll take care of you guys for sure. That goes for any of you guys watching and listening too. If you guys are ever in Charlotte, just shoot me a DM.
There you go.
We'll get you right when you're here in Charlotte. But we have so much to talk about Saints wise this offseason. We got some great guests lined up.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to be busy every Wednesday night hanging out with you guys, talking Saints football, talking the latest rumors, talking to former players, talking to some analysts. I mean, we're going to have a whole lot for you guys. We're really excited for everything that is to come. Bob, where can everybody follow you on the World Wide Web to make sure they're up to date on everything involving the New Orleans Saints? Because what is an off season for us over the last however many years? There has not been such thing as an off season.
Nope. No off season for us whatsoever. The only thing that changes with us is there's not necessarily a deadline for certain articles. Game day articles during the regular season. Obviously, you want to get certain things in by certain times. The deadlines become a lot more lax. But other than that, we're going to provide you coverage at every angle that we can think of. In the meantime, you can help us by following me over on Facebook, Bob Rose, ROSE. I can be followed on Twitter at BobbyR2613. Obviously, as you guys know, we have our Bayou Blitz Twitter page at Bayou Blitz Pod or Bayou Blitz Facebook group, which is just that, the Bayou Blitz. Make sure you guys continue to build that. That helps promote your show because we do streamline all of our works through our personal page too, but we want to make that Bayou Blitz Twitter page and Bayou Blitz Facebook group grow. We want to make that kind of its own entity because that will make your show, your Wednesday night Bayou Blitz grow as well. And thank you for everything that you have done so far. Keep it up. Keep us going strong for you.
And for myself, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at BT Boylan. I want to throw this out because we only got like 3 more weeks for you guys to get in on this contest. If you guys haven't heard or you forgot because the holidays, the end of the season, what have you, Bob and I are giving away 2 Funko Pops, 2 Drew Brees Funko Pops. We're going to run one giveaway here on YouTube for you guys that don't have social media. And then for the ones that do have social media, we're going to have another giveaway over on Twitter. So if you're on Twitter, make sure you look out for that tweet. When it comes to YouTube, all you have to do is in the comment, give me your name, your favorite moment from the Bayou Blitz this season. It's really easy, super duper easy for you guys to enter. So please do that. That way, you guys get entered for a chance to win something pretty cool that you can throw up in your man cave, display it wherever you need to. And Bob and I will include a nice note thanking you guys that way. You guys know that we love and appreciate everything that you do for us. Follow all the work with the Saints News Network, Bob, John, Kyle, and Carla. We will be back with the Bayou Blitz on Wednesday night. Like I said, we have so much to talk about this offseason. We'll have more polls. Please get involved, not just in the Facebook group, but on the Twitter page as well. We want to continue to grow there and just be able to interact with you guys. Follow us both on Twitter. Reach out to us on Twitter. Like Bob said, if you have any questions about things being, I don't want to say verified, but if you want to make sure you're not getting spooked on Twitter by some fake sources, just reach out to us. We'll be happy to talk to you guys throughout the entire off season. Well, Bob, my friend, until next Wednesday, my friends at home watching and listening, until next Wednesday, that's Bob Rose. I'm Brendan Boylan. Make sure you find some peace, spread love, and practice positivity this week. We'll see you next week for the Bayou Blitz podcast.
Do that.